How can you use a barbell back squat as an athlete to get your desired outcome? Well, there's different ways and different depths that we can do a barbell back squat. I'm pretty sure you've probably seen a lot of these, whether it be through coaches or through social media, where we have some people who squat and they get really low to the ground, some people who are kind of at that halfway point, and some people who really don't squat that low at all. Well, did you know that all of these serve different benefits? I'm not saying that everyone you see and everyone you know is doing these benefits. Some people are just doing it wrong, right? But if you have the knowledge of why might we do these different angles and these different movements, you then can tailor your workouts to make sure you're maximizing every rep to be exactly what your desired outcome is. So when we're talking about a barbell squat, the first thing I want us to think about is what is our desired goal or outcome, and then the next layer to that is how does that apply to sport, right? So the first one, desired outcome, if we're looking at all the different ranges of a squat. So we have a full depth squat, we have a half squat, and we have a quarter squat. Those are going to be the three variations we're talking about. We're not talking front squats or rear foot elevated split squat, anything like that. We're literally just talking a back squat, okay? If we're looking at that, if we look at a full squat, we're getting, some coaches will say it's called ass to grass, right? We're getting our butt as low as we can to the ground, and then we're getting back out of it. What are we working in that angle? Well, we're working hypertrophy, right? So we're working, muscle size would be a benefit there, right? And then the second layer is our range of motion. We're gonna be getting really deep into that squat and then popping back up out of it, right? If we're looking at a half squat, then we're gonna still be in that hypertrophy area, and then we're gonna drift a little bit into the explosive side, right? We can be somewhat explosive out of a half squat. And then we look at the quarter squat. Our quarter squat, we're not gonna be in that hypertrophy area. We don't have as much length going into the muscles and then contracting out of it. We're pretty shallow, and we can be very explosive. Hence why that's going to work more explosiveness. Typically, when we look at the different ranges, we can load those a little bit differently as well. You're going to be able to do a lot more in a quarter squat than you would a full or a half. You're going to be able to do more in a half than a full, so on and so forth. Okay, so the real question is, how do we tailor this to be exactly what we need as an athlete? So if we're talking about your sport, that's really where we need to go, and we need to go to desired outcome, all right? So even if we have our sport, we know what we want to do. If our desired outcome is different than that, then we can utilize this different to get there, okay? So let's talk about sport. Let's use the example of basketball. If we're talking about a basketball player and we're talking about what angles might that basketball player's legs be at during game, and where might we see angles that we need to be strong in. The point of working out, of any sports performance training or anything like that, is to be strong in the angles that we need to be strong in, right? It just makes sense. So if I'm a basketball player, how often do I see myself in a full squat position where my butt's all the way to the ground? Well, the answer to that is probably not very often, if ever, right? And if we are in that position, we probably didn't get there on purpose or want to be. It was probably a situation where we had something that caused us to be in that position, right? But we don't find ourselves there very often. Which means, do we need to be really explosive through that movement? Not necessarily. If we're never going to be in that movement, why do we need to be really explosive through that movement, right? Same with a half squat to a certain extent. For some, we might find that we spend a little bit of time at that half squat position on defense or something like that where we get pretty low. But let's take the general population for basketball. We stay pretty tall. We have a slight bend at the knee, but we're really in that quarter squat range. So when we're thinking, okay, when I jump as a basketball player, if you watch a video of a professional basketball player jumping, they're not going to get their butt all the way to the ground. They're probably not even going to be at that halfway mark. They're probably going to be up in that quarter squat position, which means that athlete should be training to get really strong in that position. When we look at training to really gain some strength and explosiveness and really develop force, which is our biggest goal as an athlete, well, we need to get in angles that develop that force, and then we need to overload those angles, right? So if I am jumping from a quarter squat position, I need to overload that quarter squat position to create that adaptation from my body to get stronger and more forceful in that position, if that makes sense. So I can load the quarter squat, whereas I might not be able to load the half squat quite as much. So if I'm doing a half squat and I'm getting all the way down and exploding out of it, I'm not going to be able to do nearly as much weight as I would in the quarter squat, which means in that quarter squat position, I'm not being overloaded. I'm overloading the half squat, but by the time I get to the quarter squat, it is no longer an overload. It is less, and sometimes significantly less, than what I could actually do if I were just doing a quarter squat. So if the goal is to overload and build up force in that position, but I'm going lower than that position and I'm overloading a different joint angle, then I'm not necessarily getting the desired outcome I want. Now, will I still build up some strength and will I build up some size of the muscle? Sure. But is that actually our goal? If it is, then great. Utilize all the different squat methods if your goal is to develop hypertrophy and size in the muscles. I will give a cautionary idea for you. I don't, as a trainer, do a whole lot of full depth squats, only because our risk of injury is going to increase as we get deeper and deeper into our squats. And for me, it's a game of don't get injured. Now, if your sport requires you to get a little bit deeper and in those lower joint angles, then by all means I will do it. But for like a basketball player, I'm never gonna coach you to go all the way down ass to grass. We're gonna go at a max half squat to make sure we're getting that hypertrophy if that's our goal. But if that's not our goal, we're not gonna stray away from that completely, but we are gonna spend some time doing quarter squats as well to make sure we're getting that max force, right? So if we take those sports and those angles that we get in and that we see when I jump, when I sprint, when I move, what angles are my knees and my hips at, and then we need to mirror those angles when it comes to a back squat. That is the real key to this, is how do we mirror the angles that we're going to be in sport with our back squat to help get the desired outcome it is that we're looking for, okay? Like I said, if we're thinking I need to build some size and put on some size, then that doesn't necessarily translate. If I was a basketball player and I need more size in my legs, if that was my goal, then I would need to do some half squats or a little bit lower, and I would need to stray away some from the quarter squats because we're not going to see nearly as much hypertrophy in those angles. So as an athlete, you have to decide now, what angles do I find myself in? If you're a volleyball player, what angle am I standing in when I need to be explosive? What angle am I jumping from when I jump? And go record yourself. And then the perfect angle isn't even necessarily a quarter squat. The perfect angle, if your goal is to develop explosiveness and power, which I know a lot of you, that is your goal, then find that angle that you're being explosive and powerful through. If you jump a lot in your sport, record yourself jumping, and whatever angle you're at, mirror that angle with your squats. If you do that, then you're overloading the realistic perfect angle that you're going to use in game. Now with that, you're never going to have exactly perfect, but the idea is to get close. I hope this helps. As athletes, we have to utilize the tools in the best way for ourselves, and that is not a one size fits all. So you need to take your goals and tailor make those goals when it comes to deciding how are you going to move the weights that you are moving to get the best outcome for yourself. If you have more questions on this, please DM, message us, however you want to communicate with us. We'd love to answer more, or let us know, here's my specific sport, what should I do? And we can give you more information on what's going to be best for you to develop your game and get your desired outcome. We will see you next time. Peace.